Today, we are blessed to be talking with one of Minnesota's finest, Marlowe Nelsen. Born in 1935, this Cottonwood County native has lived a life of admirable service to our community and our great nation. A committed husband to Donna, a fabulous father to Karin and David, Marlowe is a devoted leader with a turbocharged energy level that inspires and motivates missions, projects, ideas, and people in ways that drops jaws of amazement from all who know him. Armed with an amazing work ethic, along with an unsurpassed internal drive and determination, Marlowe is perpetual motion. First question for you, Marlowe. Is it true that you picked up a hitchhiker on your honeymoon?
Well, my wife said I did that, so I can't lie. When I was in the service, I was stationed in Fort Riley, and I hitchhiked home a few times from there, and so I thought it was appropriate for me to offer the serviceman a free ride also, so I just did it, I guess, out of loyalty for what they did for me, and my wife wasn't real happy, but it worked out. Times are different now, maybe not now, but I did then.
Absolutely. Times are different, but your personality carries through. Obviously, a people person your entire life. Let's just go back to your childhood. You're born in December 1935, so you'll be turning 86 here next month. A 1954 Westbrook grad. What are some of your first memories from your time back in the 30s and 40s?
Well, it was different times, you know. My dad was sort of labor-oriented a little bit because he grew up in a large family of 11 brothers and sisters, and they were all expected to do something. And so I can remember when I was maybe in the early teens going out and milking cows by hand. I didn't have any choice. My dad said, we'll go out and milk the cows now. And so we'd milk the cows, come in, have breakfast, and get ready to go to school. And I can remember when I was a little bit older, my brother is 2 years younger than I, and we were both expected to spend some time helping spring and fall. So we missed a lot of days of school because manpower was needed out in the farm. And so I don't know if it was all bad. My brother was a very good student. I was average. So, but it led to very hard for us to involve in extracurricular. I was in band and chorus. I went out for football my senior year, but I was in track all the time. My dad said, well, you can just run home. That'll be your training. So.
Yeah, but no school buses or carpools taking you back and forth.
No, that's
from the
correct.
Farm
I was fortunate. The school my dad went to, country school, that was closed in about 1940 maybe. And so I was fortunate. I went to town every day of my school life. So there was no country school, but a lot of my friends that I was in class with, they did have country schools. So there was a lot of them around at that time, but I didn't have to go to any of them. Maybe that's too bad because some of my best students in my class were from country school. You know,
absolutely.
And that happened in a lot of it because I think they tended to learn more being with other classmates than what we probably did going to public school. It's just the way it looked afterwards.
Yeah, pros and cons to everything, but I think many would say that, yes, you learn a lot in the school environment, but boy, the education you get growing up on the farm and doing everything you had to do helps develop a person, helps grow a boy into becoming a man. Tell us a bit about what life was like on the farm.
Well, my dad always seemed to find work for us. It didn't seem to be rainy days and that there wasn't a holiday. He always said, well, we maybe should do this today, but we were fortunate it became at supper time. We were free after that. And we had some neighbors close to us, and we did get together almost every night we could, either playing softball or a football or basketball. And so that wasn't all bad. But my dad couldn't stand, if he didn't have enough work, he had a knack to call the neighbors and said, the boys are free today. Do you need help? So we went to a lot of the neighbors, but we usually got the jobs that I think they didn't want to do. Clean the chicken house or the hog house or these types of things. So it was hard work is what it really was. And it was, you've never been in these chicken houses where they have these raised roofs and when you raise them up, and it's pure stuff, and it just make your eyes water. You know, it wasn't pleasant, but you know, we all got over it. And my brother and I still laugh about it. When we were thrashing grain back then, so we shocked a lot of grain and pitched a lot of bundles and those kinds of things. But then I even had to pick corn a little bit by hand. It's hard to believe that they did that, but it was available because we had snow early one year and machines couldn't move. So my dad still had horses, so we went out and threw them up into the wagon like you see in the old days.
Absolutely.
But, you know, all jokes aside, it didn't hurt me. I think if everybody had to do a little extra work, maybe we might be better off worldwide. My feeling, but maybe I'm wrong.
You've done something right.
Work ethic is important. Both my children say the best thing they learned was my daughter picked rocks, she walked beans, and she put it on her resume always. I learned to do these things whether I wanted to or not. So I think it says something. Whether everybody agrees or not doesn't really make any difference.
That Minnesota work ethic and the Minnesota nice dynamic is a nice combination for anybody that wants to find success in this world. A bit of the little house on the prairie type mindset. You're your own Michael Landon there. What we were talking earlier about, working hard, really long, hard days, and I told you a story about my one son, my 3-year-old, who was not wanting to go to the bath, to take a bath very often. And you said, you responded, well, back in the day, he maybe be better off because you only were able to take a bath once a week.
Well,
tell a bit about how things have changed with lifestyle. I guess I'm looking at what things that you grew up with that you had to do that maybe others don't today, and why that was good, and maybe why progress is also good.
Well, one thing my wife and I have talked about a lot is her parents. She was an only child, and so they didn't have the luxury. They were milking cows, so they never took any trips. And so when we were fortunate, we had more manpower and stuff. When my parents had said, well, we're going to take some trips. You'll be home to do the work. And when you get older, you'll be able to take your own trips. So I never took a trip with my parents. My mother had a brother and a sister-in-law there. They took lots of trips. They were all over the United States, all over every year. They drove someplace. But I guess I've traveled so much since, it hasn't made much difference. I've driven in every state in the Union, and Alaska and Europe, so I guess I'm not deprived too bad.
No, I think you've put your fair share of frequent miles on the road and in the sky.
That's right. So
you made up for it. Anything that you didn't get at the beginning, and maybe that inability to travel much growing up helped foster that desire to travel later on in life.
Well, maybe so, and it's just, I don't know. yeah, I think back, but I guess I didn't mind that I didn't get to go. This is something I thought I had to go along. I guess I was never asked, and so therefore it wasn't a hardship. So, I guess I never felt bad that I didn't go on a trip with my parents, but, that's so long ago that I don't remember very much on that.
Was your first trip your trip to Germany with the Army? Would it have been your first
I
travel?
was involved in 4-H, and so I did go to the state fair a couple times, but FFA convention, I was in a state choir at that time for the FFA. But that's the only thing. We used to go, some of the guys down to like Okoboji on the weekend, those types of things, but never any distance at all. So it was, I guess I never felt bad that I traveled when I was younger.
What do you remember about your mom and dad? What do you remember about your grandparents?
I never knew my grandfather on my mother's side. He died young, and then she remarried, and her name was Josephine. Everybody called her Josie, but I can remember she worked in a hospital in Westbrook until she couldn't do it anymore. And but those fun times. She married another fellow later in life, and Marinas, and so we get together a lot. And we played a lot of whist, Norwegian whist. I know you gentlemen are acquainted with that, but they were strong Baptists, so they played rook and whist, the two games. So we did that with them. And my grandfather on my dad's side was, well, he was a stubborn Dane, I guess is what you might as well say it. And we were thrashing at the time, and he always was sure he had to be there when we started. He had to make sure everything was level. And we had an old 4080 Minneapolis, one of those huge tractors, and he was the one that sat up on top of that when we were thrashing and throwing bundles when I was a teenager, until back there thrashing when the Army yet. So, but my grandmother on my dad's side, they lived in town, so there was times I needed to stay in town for something, and so I would stay with them. And with being such a large family, both families had 12 siblings, and so I had an aunt and an uncle on each side. They weren't much older than I was, so it was sort of unique. My uncle on my dad's side was probably about 5 years older than I, and on my mother's side, it was Edna. She was probably about 6 years older than I was, so it's a little different growing up under that. Some of my dad's sisters took care of my brother and I when we were young, because my mother was having other young children at the time, so we had that working with us all the time. So we were pretty good friends with Artis and Nina, which took care of my brother and I all through our life. So a little different than some families have.
You and your family certainly persevered through the Depression and the World War II era. What do you recall about? Do you recall anything unique about those times, or what sits in your memory today?
Well, I'm old enough that I did have the coupons for tires, gasoline, and food, and that kind of stuff. I remember where a lot of things were traded amongst families. Some families didn't use one article, the others did, and gasoline from farm to city. The farmers had more gasoline than the city people did, and I remember that. In fact, I found my books not long ago when my dad passed away. Then was cleaning out the house, and here my books were there, and I gave them to my daughter-in-law. She's putting together some stuff to keep in her home, and something for future generations. to look at. Most people won't believe it happened, but it did, you know. But you know, I don't think we were ever in a time of need. I know I wore a lot of clothes my mother made because there was no money to buy clothes, but you know, I didn't care. I was young. Now I look what the kids wear, and I look pretty good back then, I guess.
Yeah. You kids pay extra to have holes in their jeans these days.
Well, I talked to somebody. I said if I went to town to play cards in jeans like that, my wife would keep me home. And they just bought them. But I don't know, is that good or bad? I can't answer.
Absolutely. So you graduate from high school in the mid-50s, 54. What's your mindset at that stage in your life? What are you looking to do? What are you thinking about?
Well, you know, it was a time when the Korean War was on, and it was 5 of us fellows that we were talking about what we were going to do, and the one was a neighbor about 2 miles from me, and we were talking, and he had brothers at home, and so it was the idea that there probably wouldn't be any farming future right away, so we just said maybe we should go to the Army or something. So then we talked to a recruiter, and all of a sudden we had 3 other young men that decided they should do that too. So those 5 of us that said, why don't we all go together? So we at that time, they would let you choose if you enlisted where you would be stationed. And so the opportunity was Europe. And so we just all thought that was a pretty good idea, and we got ready to go. And the town cop, he thought it was probably a good deal that we left. And so he said, I'll buy you guys breakfast before you go. So the recruiter said, I'll pick you up at a certain time, and he fed us breakfast, and we went to Sioux Falls and got sworn in, and then we went to Fort Leonard Wood for a couple of days and picked up cigarette butts for a couple of days, and then we went to Riley and on to Germany. So, but 2 of the young fellows that went with us, they dropped out of school. They didn't finish their last year. The one had quit earlier, and the other one decided he didn't need any more training either, so he could go to the Army. So, but sadly, the rest of them are all gone now. So, anyway,
recruiters are pretty good salesmen.
Well, yes, and you know, I don't think they told us any lies. They said you can go, you'll be going to Europe. We did. So I guess that's all I wanted to do, and I guess I don't regret it. I maybe not everybody's list, but I guess after serving for 3 years, I wouldn't mind if everybody had the opportunity to do that. I think we'd be better off, but there's things you learn there that, good or bad, you don't forget them. I think I'm much older than you, but I had some sergeants, you know, if you thought that some of the teachers are bad, I mean, they were brutal. And the language was pretty brutal. It wasn't plain English. It was from the trenches.
If you weren't focused and disciplined coming in, you certainly were after a few cigarette butts and opportunities with.
They explained the alternatives pretty well.
No.
Which it didn't take long to remember them.
So what were you trained to do, and what was your life like in Germany? What did you do in Germany?
Well, you know, I always wonder about how things happen. it happened to be I was in Fort Riley, and the winter was brutal that year in Kansas, and so I was only had 8 weeks of basic training, and then everybody was sick, and so they shut down the extended training. And one morning they had formation. You had formation every morning, of course, and they said the following individual stepped forward, and my name was called, and said, "You're going to headquarters company." And I thought, well, I don't know, really want to do that. Well, I followed through on it. I went into the post office then, and probably one of the best things. Well, pretty darn good duty is what it amounted to. I was an 8 to 5, if you can believe that in the Army, but I ran a unit later on. We all had to do the basic post office stuff. In Fort Riley, we never had a post office because all postal employees in the United States, but we had 10th Division was just starting up, so everybody coming in, they were coming in by the thousands, and the parents were calling, "Where is Joe? Where is John?" And so we had a locator file. We manned that 24 hours a day so that they could find out, are they in the infantry, are they in the artillery, or, all this kind of stuff. And so we'd give them the information. So then when we left Germany, we just took a train to New York, and First Division was in Germany, and they were coming off the boat, and they got in an area, and we marched on the boat, and they got on the train, went back to Riley, and we went to Germany. So we got over there, and then that's when we actually started running a post office. So it was in Würzburg was the division headquarters, and that's where we got the mail all came into the train depot there. So we all had to take our turns in working the windows during the day, selling money orders and that, but we also had to take our shifts going to the train depot and getting the mail. It wasn't bad until the ships came in. Then the ships came in with all, you probably like newspapers, but I don't ever see another Chicago Tribune, because every Illinois boy got a daily paper. And we'd get, 2.5 ton trucks full of daily Tribunes. And of course, they had to be sorted to go out to the encampments where they're at. And but there was a lot of packages of Mom and Dad sent everything, cakes and cookies and you name it, magazines and all that. But then after a short time, then a unit became opened, and I went out, and my man was in charge of a unit at Kitzigan. I don't know if you ever heard of Kitzigan, but they had two flak concern, and
I served in Ansbach, which was real close to both Würzburg and Kitzigan. Yeah, so I know that area fairly well.
We had the 10th Division was in Bamberg, Schaffenburg, Schweinfurt, and Kitzigan. And so that's where the truck went and brought the mail out to them. So I had a unit, just two to a unit. One was mainly the stamps and packages, and one is money orders and things like that. So I was in charge of the one unit at Kitzigan.
As a postal official, you're one of the more popular individuals in the organization.
Well, I was, it was nice. Yeah, and I got along with so many of them, and especially those you see in Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota, whatever. Shoot the bull and talk about, and maybe even had family living in some of these towns they were from and visit. But and you meet some nice people. We had one box, it was box 101. It would happen to be the CIC or FBI, whatever you want to call them. But they'd pick up the mail. I was visiting one gentleman one day, and he happened to be a graduate of Mankato State. And so I was talking, and he was saying, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Westbrook." He said, "I went with a girl from Westbrook." when I was at Mankato State, here was a neighbor of mine, Dolores Amundsen was their name now, but it was unbelievable here. These guys are sort of unique because I'd see them all the time after I'd met them, but they would be, they might be an officer one day and they might be a corporal one day, but they were just mixing around, just looking for things, I guess. And so it was neat talking to people like that. And you always had some hard-nosed guys, and I always run the parcel post. And so I met with the German fellow ran the PX, the post exchange area. And so I said, we might as well start to be friends. I said, I'll tell you what the boxes have to look like and how they have to be packaged, and I'll send your stuff off. If they're not, you're going to do it twice. So we had a good relationship. And the GIs, they sent more dishes and cuckoo clocks and home than you can imagine. I mean, I sent my mother one, and they sold it on the auction, didn't bring anything, but that's how it is. So.
Did you run into any contraband?
No.
Any fun stories of things that popped through that way?
No, I never even had. There was stories about souvenirs like German weapons and stuff being sent, but whether they were sent in a box, I never had to open them or anything. Most of ours. You probably know we didn't get paid very much. My starting pay was $73 a month, and so, but stuff was cheap over there, and so you could buy dishes or little figurines, Hummels. You could buy them for $6, $8, $10, but the biggest thing what happened over there was General Motors, Ford. General Motors was the biggest. They came in and talked to all the soldiers and convinced them that they should buy a car available on the day they got back to the States. And so they were talked into writing a postal money order to GMAC, and it was always programmed so that when they got to States, it was paid for. So when you think about money orders, we would write at Kitzigan there. We had a camp of about 3,000-4,000 guys, maybe. But our biggest bill was a $10 bill, and it was play money. I don't know if did you ever see it? It looks like Monopoly money. All the coins were paper, and the stuff was not very good quality. And so at the end of the day, we had mountains of paper of money that it had to balance. And so you had the fee for back then. They'd go to the corner in the lobby and they'd make out the application. It would be maybe $35 for a GMAC and then 15 cents for a fee, and then you had to collect it. And before you could send it into the main office, at the end of the day, when the truck pulled in, you had to total up the fees and the total, and it better match, or they wouldn't accept it up at the main office. So, but the poor guy up at the main office was worse because he had to take all of them, put them together, and total it before he could go away and close the office at night. So it was. When you think about it, it would have been real good currency but the paper would get almost like toilet paper. It get bushy, and we had pennies, but then nothing else. So it was a little different working with that. And that was the worst job, is trying to get the money order. And that was the biggest business of the post office. I chuckle. I talked to Westbrook one time. I said, how many money orders do you write a month? Maybe 10, 15. Well, we did hundreds a day, but right after payday was the very worst. So payday in by 2 or 3 days. I mean, you'd be writing until you couldn't hardly stand to write anymore. Penmanship got pretty poor by the end of it. But I had a fellow working with me from Boston, Massachusetts. He had perfect penmanship. He was a left-handed, wrote from the top across, and he did a nice Salte Martini. That was his last name, Ronald. So we got along great, and we had a good time.
Well, this is about 10 years after World War II ended. What were your impressions of Germany, of the people, of the infrastructure, of the, I guess, start of rebuilding campaign?
Well,
maybe even the
Würzburg got hit pretty hard because that was a rail hub, and it's hard to believe, and but I think the military was more conscious of it back then. But right around Würzburg, there was King Ludwig had these old castles, and we had one in Würzburg, and we had a huge a Catholic complex downtown, and they did have one bomb that hit the residential part of the Catholic, but that's all that got hit on that. But there's other areas where it totally destroyed block after block. And during the time I was there, you'd see one building up, but you never saw anything else cleaned up yet. It was, so you got to see it coming from the ground floor up. But I mean, the people were wonderful now compared to the way they are now. We've been back a few times, and France is probably the worst. But I mean, they appreciated us, is what they did. We could go uptown and we could ask for anything and do anything, and they were for us, and it was great. And we always went uptown, and you could go uptown and have a dinner and a liter of beer for $1.25, maybe. I mean, things were cheap. We had an EM club. There was a fellow there that did hobby work, and I made a camera carrying case, and Rudy Zepter happened to be his name, and he wanted me in the worst way to sponsor him to come to the States. Sometimes I wish maybe I would have considered it, but I was single at the time, but he had a wife and a child, but nicest man ever. But he wanted to get out of there, and I don't know if you followed the war much of it. Schweinfurt, Germany, that's where all the ball bearings were for all the German army was processed. And there was one time a total of how many hundreds of thousands of pounds of bombs were dropped. They never did take it out just because it was all underground. But it was a nice time. I traveled an awful lot. I had the opportunity to live with the Division Artillery Band. Two of us in the post office had to have a place to stay. So they said, well, you can stay with the band. So we said, that's all right. Well, they had no inspections or, I mean, it was a pretty crude bunch, but it worked out fine for us. So I went every Saturday they went to a community and played. So I was their setup man. I just drank their beer.
Did they play for soldiers and troops, or did they play for?
They played for dignitaries coming in, but they went out and they were PR. They went out to all these because the schools there do not have any extracurricular after school. It's always weekends. So they have all these festivals. And so it might be rowing, it might be field hockey or these types of things. And so this band would go out and they were wonderful. They were professional musicians. Most of them were college grads that got drafted. They could write music they could create. They could take a song and make it into arrangement for all the band's pieces that they had, and yeah, they were wonderful guys and straight, really talented people. So I got to say to them, and I made an agreement with them. I said, "How about if I take care of your mail and you take care of my weekends?" So they'd have to wait for mail to come to their 85th field.
Sounds like a good deal for both parties.
Well, yeah, so it worked out great. So
you do that for about 3 years, and then late 50s, then you start.
Yeah, it was about July that we left Kansas and went to Germany. So 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
So what's you get back on the boat and take that cruise west across the Atlantic, and what's the trek like back to Minnesota? And what are you thinking at that stage with the military service behind you and your life in front of you?
I didn't have to ride the boat home.
You didn't?
No, I bought a Volkswagen. And when I was in, the government brought it back free. So I bought a brand new Volkswagen, a 57 white walled, $750. I just called my dad and said, send me some, because I'd been sending money home every month. So he sent me a check, and I bought a Volkswagen. I took it to Bremerhaven, and they put it on the boat. And then I took a Matt's transport to New York, and my uncle my mother's brother was there in New Jersey, so I stayed with them until the car arrived, and I drove home. So I didn't have to. Yeah, if you've ever been on a military transport ship, you don't want to do 2 trips if you don't have to.
Especially across the Atlantic.
Well, going over, if you ever seen 5,000 people sick at the same time, you can about imagine what it was like in the boat. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you can imagine the worst.
Those questions, those follow-ups.
Yeah.
So you drive then from New York back to Minnesota.
I did, and so then after driving
your brand new Volkswagen
on the interstate and now with semis, I decided I maybe didn't want to keep them. They're not very heavy. It was snowy and icy, and so I only kept it a few weeks. But then I come back and stop to see Donna then, of course, and the rest is sort of history, I guess. She was still in high school, you see, so it wasn't so hard to see her.
Right. So you come back, she graduates in the late 50s, so right about the same time you come back. That's right. So what did you do then when you got back to Cottonwood County?
Well, first thing I did is try to see if there was an opening in the post office. You know, that was my experience as a man was. But I don't know if you were aware, back then it was very political. And so usually the head person in that county in the party that was in power got to select the individuals, and then there was really nothing opening. So then I started farming. I rented some ground and then we did corn shelling and some other things there to create some funds and that. But then I rented the farm when they got married, and that's the farm we're living on yet. So that was 1961. So I had about just about 4 years, 3.5 years that I was staying at home. My wife went to college in Augustana, so then she taught 1 year, and then we got married. So,
do you remember your first date?
Oh yes,
with her.
She was pretty young. I was coming home from Riley, so she was about a 9th grader, I don't know, 10th grader, whatever. But yeah, we talk about that once in a while.
Yes, just a drive-in movie theater. So you made the trek to Worthington.
Oh yeah, Worthington. They had one in Pipestone, and Sladen had one, and oh yeah, then Tracy had a good theater about that time too. A lot of people went to Tracy. So
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot, Marlowe. Your wife remembered what movie you watched for your first date at the drive-in theater. Do you remember? I shouldn't put
used
you
to,
on. Yeah, Jimmy Stewart in
yeah, it's a military one.
Strategic Air Command.
Yeah.
What you remember?
Yeah.
You were thinking too much about your date.
Yeah, I remember how bad maybe I was, huh?
So you were there, and she went to Augustana. She did her teaching. How did you stay in touch? Did you write a lot? Did you take that Volkswagen and see her? Or?
Well, mainly I was just on Wednesday, and I went out there, and then on Friday I went to pick her up and took her back on Sunday. So, it wasn't too much time apart. And then when she was at Sibley, then she would just drive home whenever she wanted to. She had my car, so.
With your time in the post office, did you develop an interest in letter writing? Did you guys write letters back and forth?
I did all the time, yes. And I wrote to other people too, but my parents. Mom always wrote a lot, so. And I had a lot of time because I don't know if you've been in the post office here. Some days there's just nothing going on, especially after payday is over.
The payday rush is done.
I had 5 units that picked up mail from me, and so they would come down. I had about 9 o'clock or so, wait for the truck to come in, and we had a game at Gin Rummy that we kept going for over 2 years. Just never let this different score. We just added to it. So, in fact, one buddy, he was at Vermillion, South Dakota. He was a chiropractor and retired, and he came down from the 10th Medical Battalion, and we still talk about that. He'd sit up there and we'd play gin rummy until they took the mail and brought it back to their unit, and then when they came back in the afternoon to send the mail out again, we'd probably have a couple more hands. So it was a fun time. And got some nice people. I had a nice mail clerks that picked up from me. So
you get married in the early 60s and went on a long honeymoon. And that's where I learned that you picked up a hitchhiker on that drive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was a lot. I had
what an adventure that is.
I had a 60 Chevrolet 6-cylinder. And of course, we got in Washington, D.C., and stop and go traffic. The car got hot. And, I tell you. But we were glad to get out of that. And then we did visit my buddy that I had from Boston. We had dinner with him. And then we went to Niagara Falls. And we had a nice trip. My wife still wonders how I maneuvered that, leaving in June when all the field work is to be done. But it worked out.
Yeah,
somebody
all that bartering you did.
Yeah,
all that bartering you did in the military paid off. You learned it.
Well, maybe I traded. I don't remember. But anyway,
something else.
It worked out.
It sure did, especially for Donna too, being from you had that experience traveling to Germany and all around, but that was quite a honeymoon experience for her.
Well, yeah,
and a great way for you guys to learn about each other that much more.
Well, that's right.
In a car and a long drive.
We did have the opportunity to go to my Army base a couple times with Donna and I. We went on with another couple to Europe on their 25th wedding anniversary. So I got to show her the old barracks I was in and show her the post office I ran then. And it had changed now because the Germans are on it now. But so it is nice that she could see where I worked and where I slept, and then all the places we got to see. A lot of them that I visited when I was in the service, she got to see personally. And then we went back with my brother when he picked up planes for United Airlines. So we drove the romantic road from Munich up to Würzburg area. We drove that, and we went to Kitzingen again with my brother, and so we backtracked a couple times. So it was neat.
The traveling, the adventures never stop once you started. It's a bug that you can't get rid of. That is awesome. So you get married and you're in the Westbrook area. What do the 60s, 70s, and 80s look like for the Nelsen family?
Well, it was a little. We were only farming the 160 acres, and there wasn't. And we were doing we had pigs and cattle both at the same time, and all I know is that I never thought we were poor, but I look back how much I paid Social Security, and it wasn't very wealthy. We paid very little. But I guess we had a lot of friends back then, and so we did a lot of visiting with the friends, and then we started having children, and I don't know. I guess I've never felt like I was out there alone. We had, Minnesota's a little different. If you have trouble, you'll find out that you got 40 people that show up tomorrow, and it'll take care of your work. You don't have to worry about it. So, not that I needed that, but I have helped others, that were in that situation, and you just go over for the day and go home, and you think, oh, that wasn't a bad day. So
hogs and cattle?
Yeah, I had my own pigs and farrow. And then my brother decided he wanted to get bigger, and so then he raised them, and then I fed them out. And so we did that in quite a few years, and then I put up a finishing barn, and then he decided to go on his own, and so I had a couple of years with another fellow. We put some pigs in the barn, and then I got elected as a commissioner and decided I didn't want to be responsible. I had too many other obligations, so I rented the barn out and just took it down this spring. So it's in a hole in the ground.
Oh my gosh!
Anyway,
some memories.
It's good to have it gone. My wife didn't like the smell. It was west of her house, and west winds are pretty prevalent.
Absolutely. So you growing up on the farm and then parenting on the farm, what was different for you as a parent versus a child, and what was the same? What are some of the lessons that carried through, and maybe some things that you did differently?
We tried to get you always have things that needs labor for, and a couple of them back then was walking beans. I don't know if you ever got involved in that, but we did our own, and then both Karin and David, a lot of them were shooting with these here chemicals, but we walked, and so I said, well, we'll just do ours this way. If you want to go work for somebody else to do that, when we get done, then they did that, and of course we picked rocks. We'd hire some others, and but like Karin even said, I never liked it, but I guess it didn't hurt me. So
no, just like you, yeah.
But
and did you built a house back in the early 70s?
65.
65, okay.
No, 71. 71. I bought the farm in 65 and built the house in 71.
That's quite the undertaking.
Yeah. I had my best friend in high school. He was teaching drafting in Davenport, Iowa. And so Elroy Gertner, the Gertner families that live in Rose Hill Township, you probably don't know, but anyway, he says, I got my class there. You tell me what kind of a house you think you'd like to build, and we'll make the blueprints for it. So he brought it to his class, and he called one time and says, we got some, see what you think about it. And so, yeah, we like that. And so then I went and got bids from a contractor and an electrician and a plumber. And I hate to tell you, what we built the house for, but 21,500 with all the
Really?
cupboards, cement, and I think we had some of the carpeting was in there and some appliances for that. No, you can't get a garage door hardly put in for that. But
How much of the work did you and Donna, or and I don't know, all the kids were probably a little young. How much work did you guys do?
well, we helped out, but the carpenter, they had a bunch of projects going, and so he'd say, "Well, Monday, I think we'll be there, and we're going to do this." Well, I'd line up a bunch of my family and relation. He'd never show up. So carpenters, when they say Friday, they don't mean which week or month they're talking about. So he just said by Thanksgiving we'll have you in there, and they did. So I guess that was important, but we didn't do a lot of the work. We helped a little bit with putting up some of the sheeting, some of the flooring down, but they had 4 people there, and they were very good, and so. But we, like always, we tried to help if we could. Cement work, they always took care of that. We did a lot of cement work on our own feed floors and stuff. That just call everybody, say, "Gonna run cement tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock." They'd show up and start throwing gravel and cement and water into a mixer, and somebody'd be wheeling it. But my wife still, she says, all I did was cook, because we never could invite anybody over. If you didn't have lunch at 9:30, they'd be hollering. Then you got dinner, and if you didn't have lunch at 3:30 in the afternoon, they'd probably go home. So she had to make 3 different preparations every day for the people that were there helping. So, but she said, I guess I got over that too.
How has farming changed over the decades from when you started to
Well,
now, or just life on the farm?
it's hard to explain, I guess, because when I used to go out and work a field, it'd probably do 3 days, and now my renter was worked the 80 acres where my wife owns up where she grew up. They were there about 2 hours, and it was all done.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to change.
Right.
It's just, I guess, progress. I'm not so sure, but I mean, we used to take weeks to take our corn out. They do 1,000 acres in that time. It's unless you went through from the beginning, like a 2-row full-type picker to a 8-row combine. There's no comparison. Yeah. It's hard to explain unless you've been out on a mounted corn picker, or you're in a combine with GPS now, where you set it down a row and then you read a book until it gets to the end. And yeah, unless people grew up on a farm, they wouldn't understand it. So
Absolutely. It's yes, we can call it progress, but I hear you. Well, you obviously couldn't have gone through this life, had the success you had alone. Tell us a bit about your wife and what she's meant to you, and then tell us a little bit about your kids, Karin and David.
well, Donna was when after we got married, then she decided she was going to be a stay-at-home mom, because we always had these projects and things had to be done, and so she was always there to take care of everything. The first house we had was not very nice. In fact, it was. I think a lot of the walls was like 2x2 even. It was a very cold house. It had a little basement under there, and had a cellar under it that went into it. You had to go outside to get down there. But when we had a south wind, I mean, the linoleum would lift up and in the living room. So it was, of course, I don't know, your dad's like mine, but my dad says, maybe you should just keep that one part that they put on later on the house, the living room area, and just add to it. And I said, once you start doing that, you never get done tearing away. And I said, I think we're just going to build away from it. And when we get done, we'll just carry the stuff over to the new house. And I took a pail of gas, and it got too hot, but I got rid of it pretty quick. I lit it, and it was done. So. But Karin David, I found out later, they were a little mischievous, David especially. The things that they did that they never told us. I had a motorhome, and they had taken that out for a few drives, but that's all right. But they were good kids. They were both good students. Karin has sort of got I don't know what kind of memory, but she can look at something and never forgets it. Like music or something, she can look at it and play it, or photographic memory, or whatever you want to call the stuff. But she was a good student, but there were never any trouble for us. She was involved in cheerleading, and she was a good pianist. So she was in the state piano contest. It's a number of pianos that get together. It was always in the cities. She took her lessons from Carol Madison by Lamberton, and so she did very well. But she was doing a flip for cheerleading, and she broke a finger. So the one contest that she was really looking forward to, she couldn't play. So, but then she got a scholarship to Augustana for music, and then while she was there, she decided she didn't want to stay in music. So then she went to Mankato, and she went into accounting. And so I don't know if do you follow accounting very much?
A bit.
Well, anyway,
I love my accountant.
Anyway, when you're done with your degree, you have to take the test, and it's a national test. And so she was one of the top 1% of the nation, and she got the Sells Award for that, for being in the top 1% in the United States, taking the CPA exam. So, and then David decided he wanted to follow through, but he was in track and basketball, football, and really no trouble at all. And there's a funny story when the senior prom was going on. He took, do you know Jim Dibble? Does that name ring a bell to you at all? But I don't know. Well, anyway, his daughter Lynn, we did family get-togethers, and they were good friends. And so David took Lynn to the prom, but he took Hillia home. So then they got married. So it was sort of a funny deal. But anyway, David went on to Southwest State. We had a Westbrook grad that was teaching accounting at Mankato. Took both the kids under their wing, and they did very well, both of them. And so David was working with business ever since. Also, he's with Delta Dental at once, and then he was with KPMG accounting first, and then he went with a dental outfit, and then he was in charge of a bigger one out in the East Coast, and then now he's with the doctor outfit in Stillwater. So it's sort of the old story that neither one of them asked for money, so it's a good deal.
Absolutely. That is a really good deal. Well, so they caught your bug for adventure and travel. Certainly have gone on and found success in life. Any advice for parents of today, raising teenagers, of what they can do and should do, or things that worked for you, parenting, you and Donna?
Well, I think it's good if the parents get involved in some of the things in the community so they see what's going on. I was on the school board 12 years and county board 16 years. And so I think it's good when the kids see that you are involved and not just maybe going to the bar in the evening or something like that. I think they appreciate that later in life, if not right away, because you're gone a lot. I was an EMT for 25 years. I was gone a lot in the evenings. We had a lot of calls at the middle of the night, and but things like that, the kids thought it was good that we did those things. They saw what happens when you do those things, and if you don't have those things available, then your community's losing. So, but I think the biggest thing you can do is get them involved in what you're doing. I didn't ask them if they wanted to go out and pick rocks. I said, we're going to go out, and I think that didn't probably hurt. Just the idea that you're not always free to do everything you want to do. You're going to have your free time, and that's fine, but there's things that has to be done first. And I think, and it all depends on sometimes how you say it. I know I've heard stories about some parents threatened and all that. I never threatened. I just, this is what we're going to do today, And
it's not a question; it's a statement, and you're expected to have, you have high expectations.
Well, that's right, and I think they feel like they're part of it too.
They're present.
It's a little different than if you bring somebody in from the outside and they have no part in it at all. It's a little different feeling. The time when I was growing up, we had family members that sort of displaced because of separations with the family and that, and we had people staying at my folks' in our house. And when we were first married, cousins that the parents had taken off on their own and left them stranded with no supervision. So we were more or less volunteered to take these people in our turn type thing. So, and it wasn't all bad.
Well, your children definitely, especially in reflection, appreciate the high expectations you had for them, and you encourage them to do their best and do well in school and to be active and don't be lazy and all that. And I think they also appreciate, then when you went out and did fun things, you went on all these vacations and traveled, they appreciated that too. And so they got to see the rewards for the hard work. And then one thing they certainly appreciate about you is the fact that you were just such a people person. When you would travel, you could strike up a conversation with absolute anybody. And, they kind of would even say, boy, why is Dad talking to all these people?
You talk about that, we took the kids to Banff, through the Yellowstone and all that. And so we asked one day, well, what do you think of it? Oh, not another hill. So,
you were just like Griswold. Not another fountain.
So they still laugh about that. My daughter was sort of the boss of the two. We had a 74 old, a big old and David would be up in the back window a lot of time because Karin had the whole back seat. So she was the boss, and they laugh about that. And David said, "You always got to take the choice," and I had to sleep up in the back window and all that. But they're the best friends now. I tell you, they would do anything for each other, so it's good. We don't have to worry about that. But
You don't have to be a referee.
no, not anymore. No.
Not anymore, anyway. So you've touched on it throughout the conversation, but let's look a bit about your service to the community and everything you've done. Certainly on the school board. You talked about your time as the commissioner, as the county commissioner, chair of the school board, and ambulance squad. I mean, the church, everything else that you've done. Why does somebody like you do all that? Wouldn't it be easier to?
Well,
not?
You've heard the expression, if you find somebody that volunteers, that's the one you ask the next time too.
You don't do it well, so it'll keep coming back to you.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I've lost some dollars because there was always projects coming into town. Well, we had a guy that was going to start a TV shop, and so he needed money. So then he went out and asked everybody, "Would you put something?" So we pooled some money and got him going. Of course, he didn't last. Well, then we had a friend of the family that started this here ice castle fish houses. So they sold shares in that, and we had a lot of people in Westbrook invested in that, and they'd operated for a couple of years, and then it went bankrupt. You look back on it and you say, this is really dumb that you put money into some of these things, but you're trying to make the town better. I'm on the Ed Foundation board for Westbrook. It's hard to believe I took out a life insurance policy when I was in 9th, 10th grade. $10 a month, I think it was, and it went for 10 years or something. So when I got on the board, I said to the kids, I got this $1,000 life insurance policy. What about if I give it to this Ed Foundation? Yeah, go ahead. Well, you know what it's worth now? $11,000. So we had a meeting the other night, and so they'll have some funds to look at. But these kinds of things, just like being on the ambulance squad, we were taking 110 hours of training, and then you have to retest every 2 years. Well, it wasn't so bad, but when we were on, my wife and I each took a shift. So with 2 weeks out of the month, we were responsible from 7 at night to 7 in the morning. So we could never go out in the evening. We could go to local ball games. You couldn't go to away ball games. So 25 years we did this, and you wonder, are you sane or crazy? And we got $5 an hour, I think, for on a run, and sometimes you'd go to Sioux Falls and you'd be gone for 6-8 hours.
What motivates you to say yes to those things, whereas others go to?
Well, I had a friend that Alan Roop. He said we need an ambulance in Westbrook, and that's when the federal government was giving rigs to communities that got organized. Alan Roop was his name. He was a state fire marshal later, and so we decided we weren't EMTs to start with, but they had a training program prior to that, and Westbrook had 130 people that showed up the first night of class to be ambulance. Well, that wasn't going to work. We knew that, but we ended up with an awful lot of team members, and now they're having struggled to keep it going because it's changed, and the training has changed, and the testing has changed, and the health department doesn't like it when I raise my hand anymore, because I still feel strongly that it could be changed. I question whether an EMT has to train every 2 years and take a federal test when doctors don't, nurses don't, teachers don't, veterinarians don't, and why an ambulance attendant has to do that. So they always shake their head and they say,
Oh, it's
"What is
Marlowe
it,
again.
Marlowe? What?" I'd like to tell you again, my position.
Don't stop being Marlowe.
Right.
And all these efforts, all these lines of efforts you're doing, it's I mean, towns like Westbrook need people like Marlowe Nelsen to succeed and thrive. And obviously you're not the only one, but many do. And thank you for all you do and have done and will do. You're not done yet. You look you got
You know, I wasn't active. I'd probably weigh 300 pounds instead of 200.
So I also hear you're a pretty cutthroat card player. So how do you justify being such a nice, amiable guy and so friendly, and at the same time you're gonna stick it to somebody playing cards?
Well, you know,
how does that personality calibrate?
Well, everybody says I remember cards. I can remember a hand of bridge maybe for 10 years but if I'm playing cards with you or somebody else, by the time the night is over, I'll know some of the cards that you have in your hand just by how you play and that. And I count cards, so I know what's out there and I know what is good in my hand. But some of them all says, "Oh, this one looks good," and they play it. But I know it's good or it's not good, you know. But you know, I don't have to win, but I don't like to lose either.
You don't have to lose either. Right?
We play for a quarter and a dime a set. And you would think we're playing for $10,000. Because if your partner screws up, you say, "What in the world are you thinking about?" You know? So
do you play cribbage?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Well, next time I'm in Westbrook, I'm going to bring my cribbage board.
I love it too. We play four-handed when we go fishing.
Do you? Yes.
You know, and it's my brother thought he was the best cribbage player. We were playing on the plane going to Europe. I guess one of the times he was picking up a plane, and he said, "I thought I could beat you easy."
Nothing. No. Well, obviously, you've done a lot over your lifetime, and we thank you for that. And you're a man of many talents, including your ability to sing. As I've just learned a bit more about you, Karin explained how she just really enjoys sitting next to you for the Christmas Eve service and hearing you sing Silent Night. Even to this day, she would remember that and think about that, and it brings pure joy just thinking about those times that she's had with you. And obviously you've given those memories, that the reality of your life has given those kind of memories to countless people, and especially with your military service and your service to the community, and to Donna as well, as you two have held hands going through life. Just I thank you for that. Our world is in a much better place because of you and people like you. So hats off to you. I salute you, Marlowe. Any final pearls of wisdom you'd like to share? Things you've learned throughout your life, and anything that that we should be doing to make our society a little better?
We always joke a little bit. Somebody says, "Well, they had a birthday party. His friends showed up, both of them." Well, I hope when my time has come that more than two show up.
I think that's a guarantee. About that.
Well, the only thing is, I'm outliving a lot of my friends.
Yeah, that's the trouble. You're going to live to 115. That's
I don't know about that.
All your grandkids' friends.
Yeah.
We'll be there. Oh, Marlowe. No, your daughter was right. It's, as I've learned a bit more about you, you are perpetual motion. You do a lot and you don't stop and you keep going. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're so young and today, and you're in such good health, is you go. And And that's fabulous, and take good care of yourself. So, and enjoy those Cottonwood County sunrises and sunsets.
Yeah, but I put the snowblower on the tractor yesterday, so I'll be ready for that now.
Winter's coming. Yeah, you don't need the shovel anymore.
Well, you stop out again when you're in town. Stop again when you're in town, and maybe I'll have a new story.
I look forward to that, Marlowe, and I'll bring the cribbage board. See
there you go.
15-2, 15-4, 15-6, 15-8, and a double run for 16, big guy.
I got a friend, Tom Ty. He was looking at it. I don't know what the heck you guys are doing, 15-2, 15-4. I said, well, you learn. He said, I'm not going to learn. But that's all right. He goes fishing with me, so.
Absolutely.
Well, very good.
Hey, thank you. Excellent. I appreciate all you've done, and I appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you.
Talk soon.
You bet. Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Dan Keeker here. Thank you for listening to this episode of the All Roads Podcast. My fun, thought-provoking conversation with Marlowe Nelsen. I'm always looking for more interesting, talented people to share their journeys. If you have any suggestions, please email me, Dan Keeker, at allroadspodcast@gmail.com. Say that again, allroadspodcast@gmail.com. Until then, go out and make the most of this and every day. Go travel your road with a purpose and a smile.